Welcome. There's a marketing concept that's over 100 years old that any company can implement to help drive growth. I mean, any company, your company, my company, your competitor, but almost no B2B companies do this. And the thing about this concept is that a failure to implement it will lead to wasted time, wasted money, wasted effort. It will also make it more challenging for your customers and prospects. And finally, it could boost your competitors' performance. So let's get into this concept. So what is this old concept that can have such an impact on your company? It's called distinctiveness. And distinctiveness is making your brand easily identifiable by your customers and prospects. There's a fair amount of recent discussion about distinctiveness, and there's even some arguments about the difference between distinctiveness and differentiation, but it's far from a new concept. Mac Martin, I talk about this guy a lot because he was a genius. He wrote in his book way back in 1917 about distinctiveness, and this is what he said. Advertisers use many different ways to make their advertising distinctive and immediately identifiable. And he lists out the elements. Among them are that your company name, your trademark, a character, which might be a mascot, and it keeps going on. There's like type of illustration, your fonts. So there's a number of elements that can make your brand distinctive. And this is the same language leading marketers use today to talk about distinctiveness. So it's not a new concept, but as I said, very few B2B brands actually do this. So how do we measure distinctiveness? Now, credit goes to Jenny Romanek from the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, who talked about ways to measure distinctiveness. And she put together something called the distinctive asset grid, which has two axes. On the x-axis is brand attribution. How many people attribute the asset to the correct brand? And on the y-axis is asset recognition. How many people recognize that asset? So do people recognize your asset, and then do they associate it with your brand? But as I said, very few B2B brands are doing this. This is what Peter Weinberg from the B2B Institute said about distinctive brand assets in B2B. But in B2B, we found almost no distinctive assets in any category for any brand. Instead, B2B brands are all drowning in a sea of sameness. Every brand is blue. Every brand is saying the same things the same way. But why does it matter? Distinctive brand assets and a distinctive brand alone won't make your brand successful, but there are three very important reasons to focus on building them. One, it's hard to build a brand without them. We put a lot of time, effort, and money into our marketing, but without distinctive assets, that work won't be associated with our brands. Two, it makes life easier for your customers if you actually implement this. Lack of distinctive assets makes it harder for customers and prospects to find your brand. I mean, imagine someone's in the store looking for Coke, but Coke didn't have their distinctive brand. It'd be really hard to find, and that person would be frustrated. And then finally, a lack of distinctive brand assets can benefit your competitors. A lack of distinctiveness can cause your prospects and customers to associate your marketing with your competitor. So say you put out a great white paper or a great video, but it wasn't distinctive. They didn't associate that with your brand. It's likely they'll go through and associate that with your competitor. And that's not what we want. We don't want to be boosting our competitors' brands. So why is this? CEOs, you may not care, but you need to, because almost every force within your company is aligned against distinctiveness. You bring in a new CMO and they want to refresh the brand. The board is tired of seeing the same look. Your product team doesn't have time to implement your brand assets into the product. You are worried about doing something too bold, like creating a character for your brand. Or your marketing team says it looks too salesy to incorporate your brand into their content. The good news, though, is if you are willing, your company will be alone in being distinctive. If you're able to overcome those forces that are aligned against distinctiveness, if you're willing to be distinctive, you'll be competing in your own space. It is much better to play where there's no competition than to sit still among the others.